Okay, so this is the Afterburn. If you have comments or questions about the teaching, you can raise your hand and a microphone will be brought around. If you're online, you can type it in and Robert will bring it to my attention.
From David Botwick Rice.
Shalom, brother.
Is the sword and division in Matthew 10:34 connected to the sword and division in Exodus 32:26-29 after the golden calf? The choice between life, Yahweh, and death.
Exodus 32 what?
32:26-29.
Oh, when the Levites went and did the separating out? Yeah, I think it's more, I don't know, you can connect things where you see, like, the word is like a double-edged sword, and you can see other places where the word sword comes in, causing division. The sword in Exodus is being shown that there's a division between those that chose Yahweh and those that didn't. Okay, and the Levites stood up and they took up the sword. So yeah, I think there's a connection there. Mostly I wanted to just keep it to the connection of how the sword cuts through that delusion bubble. I think that's the key. The sword is used in lots of different ways, and you can see how it has to do with division as well, okay? Because it also divides even bone from marrow. We're talking about how the word does that, like a double-edged sword. So there's so many more depths to that. But I want us to just focus and not be distracted at this point from it's cutting through the delusion bubble so that you can see reality correctly. That's the lesson for today.
From Yanni, and I'm going to hope to do this justice, Matthew 10:35 and 36. She decided to leave home and got a new home, and she paid the money, and then her family changed, and she stayed. So isn't it Abba providing a way for her because she loved Abba more? Mentally, she was gone.
I would say that's a good possibility right there, yes. You know. By the way, Yanni is, where is she located? Denmark. So she's online from Denmark. How cool is that?
William Deacon said he's confused about the Torah not being hard because if we even think about coveting or other sins, then we are guilty and have sinned because Yeshua said, do not even think it.
I'm sorry. Was it
He's
coveting?
He's confused about the comment that keeping Torah is not hard because then Yeshua goes on to explain that even if you think about transgression, then you've already done it.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, there's when you take it into the depth of it, it's because it's struggling against you. If you get the you under control, then it's not a struggle. Okay. You take the thought into captivity, you're not sinning yet. It's when you dwell on it that you're sinning. The thought itself is not the sin. And I think we covered that in a previous teaching. Thinking about it is not the problem. Meditating on it so that the thought didn't just come in your head for a few seconds and dwelling on it and embracing it, that's when you've actually committed the sin. In other words, when you haven't committed adultery, but you've thought about, not once, but you think about and dwell on and meditate on your desire for that person who's not your spouse, that's sinning anyway. Just because you saw a beautiful woman or a good-looking man, whatever gender you are, and you're looking at the person, they walk by, and you go, whoa, that's not sin, okay? But now if you start thinking and thinking and thinking about that, and it stays in your head and stays in your head, and you start desiring that person, and that desire, if held on to long enough, will start to manifest in actions designed to try to get you what you desire, which is where the adultery will eventually come from. But just having the thought is not sin. It's what do you do with the thought will decide whether it ends up becoming sin. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Okay?
Okay, from Nancy. Is visiting an Orthodox synagogue with relatives the same as visiting a Christian church with relatives? Neither present the full truth.
Okay, the difference being if you go to the Orthodox synagogue on Shabbat, this is the same place that Yeshua went, it's the same place that Paul went, it's the same place that all the disciples went when they were going to share that there was more. So no, it would not be a problem if you've got no place else to go or your relatives. Look, my mother will invite me when I'm up in New York to go on occasion if I'm visiting to the synagogue. Now, I will most often say no, just because there's things there that just would irritate me too much. And I really, by the way, I don't know how I can say this. I don't want to be mean. I don't know how you guys do it. Okay? I don't know how you can go and sit in a place that doesn't have as much of the truth, whatever, and not be bothered while you're there. I don't like to go. Why? Because I can't sit there and not be irritated by all of that. So I don't know how you do that. I just don't. I'm not saying, well, how dare you do it? I don't get it. I don't know how do you sit there on Sunday, listen to what you know is completely wrong in the full context of all that, and especially if you've gone through the beware false prophets and you've kind of gotten the Jesus thing out of your head, to hear that name over and over and over and over without it just driving you crazy. I don't know how you do that. I couldn't do it. Okay, I couldn't do it. Julie and I, when we first got married, we went and visited a United Church of God congregation, and they're keeping Sabbath and keeping feasts, and they're doing pretty much all the Torah, but yet I couldn't sit there. I said, we can't do this. We did it once, and I just said, that's it, because family members invited us, and I realized I can't do that. And not so much just because I knew it was wrong, just because it irritated. I don't know how it doesn't irritate you. How are you not squirming in your chair doing all of that stuff? Okay? I mean, it had me all uncomfortable, and I just couldn't sit there. We'll make that like into a meme now. You'll see the rabbi doing this thing. See, now all of a sudden I've got like, what was it, Evan Almighty, and he was doing the dance, Whatever, I didn't even remember what dance, it was funny. We just saw that the other day, so. Anyway.
All right. Bobby Henderson wants to know that if your family cuts you off because of how you follow Torah and you strive for reconciliation, do you strive for reconciliation, or is this Yah creating a divide of the family?
All right, let's be really clear. This is a good question, and maybe we'll just end with this question, but this is a really good question, okay? You should always desire reconciliation, whether you caused the division or they did, whether you chose to split or they did. If it's a congregational thing, for example, anybody that we split from, we always tell them we'd like to reconcile and give them a path to reconciliation. If you have a rift in your family, do the same thing. Say, we would love to reconcile, but this is required to reconcile. You have to respect that we don't eat pork, or we don't do Christmas, or we don't. If you can respect that, we can reconcile. If you can't, we can't. Always make sure it's clear what will bring reconciliation. All you're asking them to do is respect that you're not going to do certain things anymore that they want to do, and you will respect that they still do them. Some of you, though, are causing the problem the other way around. You're bashing them for doing it. Okay, I told you this before we got to Christmas. I'm telling you now before we get to Easter. Stop attacking them for doing what they do as best they understand it. But you want to treat them with the same respect you want to be treated. And you want to look them in the eye and say, look, I understand this is where you are, and I respect that. I'd like you to understand that I'm not where you are, and I'd like you to respect that as well. And let's find a way to interact knowing that that's the case and respecting that each one of us goes back to Philippians 2:12, right? Philippians, where he says, you are to walk out your own salvation. I will allow you that space. All I'm asking is you allow me the same space. Then we can reconcile and have some level of relationship. So don't go in there judging, mocking, and giving them grief because of what they do, and ask them to treat you equally the same, not to judge you, mock you, or give you grief for what you do. So yes, we should always, it says in the New Testament that if possible, you should live at peace with all men. Make every effort that's possible. Accept the reality and limitations of what is possible, because it takes two. If they're not willing, then it's not possible until you're both willing. Okay, Robert, what do you got?
just while we're waiting for them to come in, Lola did want you to know that this was a great annoyed teaching, but she corrected that to anointed.
Look, some of you are going to find what I said today very annoying because you don't want to deal with the realities that the teaching brought up. And so it's going to be annoying because it's going to irritate you. And it's designed to do that. Remember, you are exactly where, to whatever degree, you're exactly where you're wanting to be, where you're willing to be, where you're tolerating being. If you really didn't like it, you'd be somewhere else. And you know that because you've been other places that you no longer are because you didn't like it enough. So when you get to that point where you don't like where you are enough, you'll change. The problem is your pain tolerance is still very high. And so you're suffering and not motivated enough yet to make a difference.